Hi, I'm Bruce Williams, CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats. We are recording, as always, in the studios of Czech Television. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. It's a privilege and a pleasure to live and work alongside them every single day. Chamber Chats are made possible by sponsorship from Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. And speaking of Island Savings, we have a guest from Island Savings today. We're going to talk about cybersecurity, financial fraud. Like, do you ever come across an email and you think, I don't like the look of that. I don't know if I should click on that or not. Or something pops up in your email or something weird happens when you're doing your online financial stuff. We're going to talk about that today because there has been a huge increase in this sort of activity since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. A couple of experts here to talk with us about that. Caroline Dixon, first of all, Senior Manager of Risk and Forensic Services with Grant Thornton. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And speaking of Island Savings, Ryan Smith is the Manager of IT Cybersecurity for Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. Ryan, welcome to you.
Thank you, Bruce, for having me.
Those are two very serious sounding job descriptions that you've got going on there. I mean, Caroline, the word forensic in yours, explain that to me.
Well, I feel like every time somebody hears the word forensics, they think of CSI and all of that. That's not what I do, but I do try to help people go through their financials and figure out if somebody has been taking money from them and how much and who's involved. So my work is really to help in that respect with any sort of financial crime, fraud, investigation, and ultimately to be used in a court scenario if needed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, forensic just means a deep dive, really, is what you're doing there.
Yeah.
And Ryan, cybersecurity, that pretty much says it all. Tell me about your position.
Yeah, my role at the credit union is to protect our members' information and provide lots of education to our members, and then also protect our internal systems from various cyber threats and hackers that are out there in the world.
Yeah, I mean, both of your jobs probably didn't exist 20 years ago. Is that fair to say, Caroline? That sort of thing wasn't really necessary?
Well, I think it's changed quite a bit for sure. I think 20 years ago, there were forensic accountants out there and that sort of financial analysis was being done, but it's certainly taken on a different life of its own right now. With all the cybersecurity threats that are out there, it's very different looking today.
Yeah, like Ryan, this is just, the word exponentially seems to fit into a lot of things these days, but this kind of stuff has grown exponentially over the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I think 20 years when I got into the IT industry, we didn't talk about cybersecurity. I don't think cybersecurity was even really a term back then. In the last, I'd say 10 years, and more so probably in the last 5 years, it's actually become its own industry within IT. And millions and millions of dollars are being spent on protecting industries and companies and people themselves.
Yeah, I mean, bank robbers don't need a getaway car to steal your money these days. They can just do it sitting at home, right? Who are these people? Caroline, I'll start with you. Who are the people that are doing this kind of nefarious activity?
Well, we see a mixture. I mean, a lot of the fraud that I'm seeing is internal to an organization still. There's a combination of internal fraudsters, external as well, and now with the new cybersecurity type hacks, it could be anybody sitting anywhere. What I've seen from my experience is it's a lot of the time with the internal theft, it's somebody who you trust in your organization, someone that's been given too much control to do too much, that sort of lack of internal controls within your organization and putting all of your trust in one particular employee. So they handle the cash receipts, they're reconciling the bank, they're making the deposits, they're just doing too much and having too much control. And it's just, it could be anybody, but really the bulk of what I'm hearing is the person that they trust the most in their organization.
That's very disappointing, but how common is that? Like that, you're talking sort of in terms of a small company right now, right? But it happens at all levels. How often does that happen?
More often than you'd like to think. It is surprising. I've been doing this work now for about 16 years, going on 16 years. And, there's never been a shortage of this type of work for me, unfortunately. There's just, every day we're hearing about something new happening, and it is extremely common. And now with the increase in cybersecurity threats as well, it's just, like I said, sort of taken on this whole new life of its own. And we've got all these threats from the outside as well. I think every day we're seeing these emails, right? With click here for this and open this attachment and trying to lure you in so they can steal your information external to your organization.
Yeah. Ryan, same question to you. Who are these people that you're dealing with, that you're trying to manage, or that you're trying to keep away from?
I think for, like Karen said, for a lot of organizations, it can be internal. And then we're also dealing with, sophisticated cyber gangs, especially coming out of Eastern Europe. When we talk about the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack that just happened last week, I read about two this afternoon that happened with a big meat processing plant, and the Staten Island ferry was, I think, potentially compromised with ransomware, both out of Russia, as we're seeing a lot of our cybercrime come. But there's a lot of internal actors as well. We see Montreal is a hot spot. Toronto is a bit of a hot spot as well for these cyber gangs. And then we also think about our nation states, China, North Korea, Russia as well, that they're also benefiting from cybercrime in some respects as well.
Are they doing this just to steal money?
They're doing to steal money as well as disrupt infrastructure. So in the case of the Colonial Pipeline hack, that was a ransomware attack. I think they came away with $4 million, and it's purely
Wow.
financially motivated. When we think about North Koreans, they're mostly trying to fund their regime through cybercrime. And then when we think of nation states such as Russia and China, they're more trying to disrupt infrastructure or possibly destabilize elections as well.
Oh, I think we've heard about that before, haven't we? A number of different times. Seeking information too. Carolyn, how can someone that's in a small business protect themselves better against this kind of activity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of what we do is try to educate companies on how to protect yourself. So it's really about that, creating that awareness in your organization. Number one, creating the awareness for yourself personally and knowing what threats are out there, what are the recent scams, but really then talking about that in your organization, doing fraud awareness training, cybersecurity training, and making sure that you are proactively thinking about your risks and doing something about it. Don't have the mentality that it's not going to happen to you, because it probably is and will. So coupled with that is doing a fraud risk assessment of your organization as well, and learning where your IT weaknesses are as well, sort of an IT health check, so to speak, and just making sure that you're proactively assessing your risk.
And who does that? Like who would a company go after to do that?
So Grant Thornton, the company that I work for, does that. There are a lot of different consulting firms out there that could offer that as well. I think one thing to really think about is, if you have an IT person in your organization, don't just necessarily assume that IT person is doing all of that. I think a lot of the time people think, oh, we've got an IT guy and he handles all of that, so I don't need to worry about it. But you need to make sure that you're not just making that assumption, and you are, if you don't have it in-house, that you're reaching out to whichever firms that you have available to you to help you guide through that process, right? Just to do that sort of awareness checking and the assessment of your risks and your vulnerabilities in your IT systems.
Yeah. And Ryan, what you're doing certainly protects the credit union. It protects Island Savings, but you're also protecting your members who have their money invested in the credit union. Is that correct?
That is correct. One of the big tenets of our program is proactive outreach. So providing security sessions for our members, going into even care homes. I've gone in and presented, and local elderly groups, chambers of commerce. I think I've spoken at majority of them on the island. That proactive education to our members, as well as providing really top-notch information on our websites. Participating in events like this is one of the key things that we do. I call it my security evangelism, and I take care of that title a little bit of being our security evangelist for the organization, and try to get our members to understand, have them actually ask questions of us, so they can actually understand, as well as sometimes some proactive outreach to some of our members who may have some concerns as well, and assisting some of our businesses and guiding them to the right partners that they may want to choose to help their security programs along as well.
I want to talk next about those interesting looking emails we get from Revenue Canada. We're talking today about cybersecurity and financial fraud with two experts. Caroline Dixon is the Senior Manager of Risk and Forensic Services with Grant Thornton, and Ryan Smith is the Manager of IT Cybersecurity for Island Savings. So Ryan, we get an email, looks pretty legitimate, from Revenue Canada asking for, how do we know it's real or not?
So one of the big things that I teach our staff internally, as well as a lot of our members when we talk about recognizing phishing emails specifically, is the overuse of emotions against us. So if an email has a lot of emotion in it, it's trying to generate an emotional response, such as fear is the big one with the CRA, or a little bit of greed, depending on the time of year. That's one of the first kind of keys of that this may be a phishing email. So you must pay this now, or you're going to go to jail. That's trying to elicit an emotional response out of you. That's generally not normal for CRA to send that type of email. The old adage of looking for the spelling mistakes or the grammar errors is almost gone nowadays. These guys are very good at crafting these emails and making them look legitimate. So being wary of that, understanding, okay, if I get an email from CRA, maybe I'm not going to click on the link, but I'm going to go to the web portal that I know is secure, and I'm going to check to see if I have a message. Is one of the ways that we want to guide our staff. Covering over the link, does that link look normal to you? Does it, is it the cra.gc.ca web address that we would normally see? Those are kind of some of the tips there that we look at. We call it the red flags, as per se, and those are some of the big ones. Who's that email from? It's generally not going to be from info@cra.gc.ca. It's going to be maybe janedoe@gmail.com, who I hope is not going to be sending a CRA email.
We would hope not, too. Online is one thing. Carolyn, how often do we hear now about mail fraud when you open up a letter that is, again, a call to action or for a company or an individual? Does that still happen much?
Yeah, I mean, there's still that happening. I think coupled with what we've been talking about, I think, we've seen instances of people maybe stealing somebody's identity and getting access to funds that they're not supposed to be accessing. So whether or not they're getting a check mailed to them, we have seen examples of that still happening, where there's a check going through the mail and coming to an organization that wasn't supposed to be receiving that check, or it's intercepted in some way. So it is still happening, but definitely the online and the cyber attacks, they're more frequent that we're seeing these days.
Something else that comes in that very often looks legitimate, whether it's email or otherwise, is using a company brand name. How does that happen, Caroline? How do they access those graphics, that whole data set that makes it look so authentic?
Yeah, we're seeing lots of that, sort of an email that looks like it's coming from somebody within your organization, somebody who's sending you instructions to maybe you're in the accounts payable department, and they're sending you instructions to make a payment, changing something so that it's getting into their hands, into the fraudsters' hands. But they access, the graphics online. They can gather information from social media. We've seen an example where there was the CEO of the company was traveling, and it was posted on social media that they were away, and then the fraudster could use that information then to tailor their email to make it look like it was coming from that individual within the organization. Just gathering as much information as they can from online sources and using that then to convince you that they are who they say they are. But again, like Ryan was saying, slowing down and just thinking about this, does this make sense? And making sure that you're not just emotionally reacting and doing something that you shouldn't otherwise be doing. If it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. And if you're being asked to do something that's a little bit out of the norm and you're not following policies, just slow down and don't do it, and make sure you kind of follow up in a different way.
Yeah. Well, as you say, these guys are, and Ryan, you said it, they're pretty good at this stuff. Where do they learn that? Where do they acquire the skills that enables them to be this kind of criminal?
I think it's very hard to determine where they learn these skills. I think, some of them are very common, just IT skills that somebody may learn online. Lots of forums in the dark web will teach you how to commit various types of, crime, to be honest with you. These people are generally, I think if we're going to think about 10, 15 years ago, they would have been the ones performing, check kiting and fake checks, that type of crime. So they're very intelligent people. They understand people's emotions. They can socially engineer, and they've just kind of changed a little bit. This is a more profitable business, and they've just changed the focus. We still see those traditional types of fraud, but more so now it's related to cybersecurity or information security.
And Carolyn, as you said before, a certain amount of, when we're talking security, we're talking about trust. So in the cases where an individual is working within a company, the trust that's been given to them is what they betray. That's what you have to watch out for.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sad truth, really. It's, obviously you want to trust people, but really double checking work and making their work and making sure that they don't have access to too many different things within your organization. And it's hard for a smaller company who maybe only has a few employees, but always double checking other people's work and trying to segregate those duties as much as possible is really important. So like I said, you don't have the same person who's receiving cash at the front desk, then reconciling the bank account and making the deposits and applying those payments to your sales accounts. If you're doing all of those things, you just have too much information, access to too much information in your company, and you have more opportunity to commit fraud.
Yeah. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk, though, about what happens if you've already been hacked. What happens if something has gone wrong? That's the answers we're seeking next. We are talking today about cybersecurity, financial fraud. Ryan Smith is the manager of IT cybersecurity for Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and Caroline Dixon is the senior manager of risk and forensic services with Grant Thornton. So, Ryan, you realize you've been hacked. What do you do?
So we're lucky that we've got a great team internally that can deal with that, but we know that's not the case for 99% of the businesses in the world. So, one of the first things that I always recommend for a lot of our members, our commercial members, is have a technology partner you can trust that can handle potential security incidents when you have it. So you can bring them on site, they can shut down your operations very quickly. The second one is, notifying all your financial institutions, depending on the type of cyber attack that you're seeing, and make sure you get your account passwords changed, locked down. You can put some additional monitoring on that. And then, one of the last ones or second to last is contacting local law enforcement. I have a lot of conversations with law enforcement here in British Columbia, and cybercrime is actually very underreported. And when it's underreported, we don't get as many resources to actually combat cybercrime in Western Canada because of that. And then the last one is, after that incident, make sure that you're going back and you're doing a post-incident analysis, understanding what actually happened and how you can prevent that in the past. Like Caroline alluded to, how much rights do they have in the organization? What information do they have access to, and how can you restrict that? And those are kind of the big key things here that I think. But the biggest one is have that technology partner that you can trust, that can guide you in protecting your systems before and after a cyber attack.
Yeah, and analyzing what happened and how it happened, Caroline, that's the forensic part of what you do, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, trying to be proactive is definitely something we recommend. Planning for something like this to happen and making sure you know who all the different players are going to be if something happens. Because when it does happen, you don't have a lot of time to react. Oftentimes we're recommending you get cyber security insurance. There is insurance that you can get, but you also have to make sure you have mitigating things in place in your organization. Otherwise, the insurance it won't cover your losses. But if something does happen, for example, at Grant Thornton, we do have a 24/7 hotline that you can call, a cybersecurity hotline, and our team can help coach you through the process. Because you might not know what to do, right? You've never encountered this before. It's like, what do I do? Where do I start? Who do I call? And we can coach you through that process. And again, like Ryan was saying, was making sure that we help figure out what the problems are and fix those things going forward so that you're not putting yourself at risk again of this happening a couple of weeks down the road, sort of thing. So sort of assessing now and then remediating.
What sort of stuff should be installed on a computer to make sure this doesn't happen, Ryan, whether it's personal or business or whatever? I'm sure there's security software upgrading itself all the time, but what's even just the most basic thing we can put in place to protect ourselves?
The most basic thing I think is really good anti-malware. In every system within the organization, servers, as much as you can possibly put it on. And hopefully that'll protect you from those potential ransomware attacks that we've been seeing a lot lately. And I think the second most important piece of security technology is really good firewalls that can detect and mitigate kind of some of those threats as they come in. And maybe one other is a really good spam filter. Majority of the ransomware that I see coming in nowadays in the last 6 to 7 months is coming in via email. And it's a social engineering attack that generally says it's an email attachment. And we find actually a lot of companies that I talk to don't actually have a really good email protection in place. So we always recommend a defense in depth, a layered approach to security. So lots of different layers that a potential cyber attacker has to go through to get to the core or those crown jewels data that you may be wanting to protect. And you may not be able to stop them, but maybe you're able to slow them down and detect it, or slow them down, and they may not be able to do as much damage. We can't prevent cyber attacks. That is just a reality. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when an organization will be compromised.
Ransomware. That's an interesting term. But what does that just mean? They're going to hold you for ransom, and if you don't pay them, they won't?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the old days of Stagecoach when Wells Fargo would get robbed by the marauding guys on horses. And, fast forward 75 to 100 years, now they're holding our technology, our data at ransom, similar to how pirates would hold ships to ransom, or kidnappers would kidnap people, hold them for ransom. Our data is very valuable to almost every business nowadays. We're very data driven. We're all technology driven. And you can hold up a business for ransom, you can't work. If your systems are encrypted, you can't do anything.
Yeah. Caroline, if somebody steals your data, how do you get it back aside from paying them?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with paying them, we try to recommend that not be done, but sometimes they don't have a choice, right? I think what we would recommend is that if you are proactive and you have really good backups of your information, and you know that that's a secure and safe way to retrieve your information, that's absolutely the way to go. Not all companies, and I would say a lot of them, don't have good backups of their data, unfortunately, and do end up paying. But if there is any way to sort of, again, be proactive and make sure you have good backups and restore from your backups, that is recommended.
Okay, we're just about out of time. Caroline, how has the pandemic changed the nature of your work?
Well, it's been an interesting year, to say the least. Right now, we're really doing so much of our work just online, working from home. Our offices are still not fully open, and we've switched to a fully online environment. And in a lot of ways, it's actually great, because it doesn't matter where we are geographically located. We can all bring the best players to the game, so to speak, and all, everybody can help no matter where they're sitting across the country. So just everything is just really electronic, and we're accessing the financial records we need online, and it's working.
So if something comes into your e-box that you are suspicious about, don't click on it. That's the simple answer on this. And do all the backup things you need to do to keep yourself safe. And you can also seek the professional help of someone like a Grant Thornton or a similar company that does that sort of thing to help your company. And of course, your financial institution, places like Island Savings, can help you protect your data and your money too. Thank you both for being here. Ryan Smith is the manager of IT cybersecurity for Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and Caroline Dixon is the senior manager of risk and forensic services with Grant Thornton. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.
For more episodes of Chamber Chats, go to checknews.ca/podcasts.